Welcome to the Equipped Disciple channel. My name is Rick McClatchy. I will be your host. We are here to be and to make disciples of Jesus, and we do that through daily devos, through Sunday sermons, and through other discipleship resources. We are here to equip you to be an equipped disciple. All right, welcome into another day of your daily devos. I'm Pastor Rick, and we are jumping into Genesis chapter 29. We're going to cover about 30 verses today. And we'll finish up the chapter tomorrow and probably link in a little bit of chapter 30 along there because it's kind of this ongoing story that goes from 29 into 30. Too much to cover, today to try to do it all in one shot. But we're going to talk about the deceiver meeting his match. The deceiver being Jacob, the heel grabber, the conniving one on the run because of his deceiving practices. He's going to meet someone that's going to cause him a little bit of grief. And so let's go ahead and just jump right in, like and comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. That would be awesome. Here we go. Verse 1. Jacob resumed his journey and went to the eastern country. He looked and saw a well in a field, and 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it because the sheep were watered from this well. But a large stone covered the opening of the well. The shepherds would roll the stone from the opening of the well and water the sheep when all the flocks were gathered there. Then they would return the stone to its place over the well's opening. Jacob asked the men at the well, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they answered. "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" Jacob asked them, and they answered, "We know him." So I'd just like to pause and remind you when it says Jacob resumed his journey, that comes right off of what we talked about yesterday of the nap he took with the stone pillow. I hope that he didn't pay too much for that pillow because the Lord have mercy. But had the encounter with God and surrenders his life, to some degree, right, to the Lord and says, "Hey, you take care of me. I'm going to serve you. It's going to be great." So we talked about that being kind of a little bit of self-centered thing going on. But you know what? That's kind of where God has to take us from, because that's where we start from. We start from a place where we're pretty self-consumed, and as we get to know the Lord, then we're able to trust him more. And so thankfully, God works with us even in that place of kind of self-centered thinking and self-centered processing. I think if we're all honest, we could acknowledge a time in our lives where we've been that way. I know I certainly can. I certainly can tell you that, boy, plenty of that in me. And so talked a little bit about it in yesterday's video. If you missed it, go ahead and grab that, watch that. Hopefully you'll find it encouraging and strengthening. So he's on this journey, again, 500 miles. And because he's planning on when he finds the girl, I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more just to be the one that walked 1,000 miles, just to fall down at your door, right? But so he's on this 500-mile journey. That's a long journey. That's a long journey in a car. But when you're walking and it's rocky terrain and could be hot, who knows, And so these are the kinds of things that he is encountering on this journey, has this encounter with God, and then continues. It says he resumed his journey. And I don't know, maybe the Bible wants you to get this, or maybe it doesn't. Take it with a grain of salt. But I just think it's important that when you have an encounter with the Lord, like an impacting moment with the Lord, that you then resume your journey. That you don't just try to pitch a tent, build a house at Bethel, the house of God, where he had that encounter. He didn't try to stay there. He didn't try to stay there at all. He just continued the journey. He resumed his journey and kept on going and went to the eastern country. And I think that's something important for all of us to recognize, that we need to, when we have had that powerful encounter with the Lord, that we allow it to sink in, we allow it to transform us, to change our perspectives, but then to move forward into what God is calling us to do. That those encounters with the Lord would be empowerment moments, would be strengthening moments, would be filling moments, But then we would go to action and not pitch a tent or build a house and say, yes, this encounter with the Lord is so good. I want to stay right here and I just want to have more encounters and more encounters, but that we would continue the journey, that we would resume the journey because God is meeting with us to strengthen us for the journey, not just to show us how cool he is. I mean, he's super cool. He could be showing us how cool he is for the rest of our lives. But he wants us to go and spread the coolness of who he is, right? And so, and no, I'm not trying to demean God by using the word cool. It just roll with me here, you know? So verse 6 is, so you have to imagine 500-mile journey, and he hears, we are, we're from Haran, which is exactly where he was headed, right? And so, and then, do you know Laban? And yes, we know him. And so, like, how fortunate that the very first place I stop here, I encounter these people that know the people I'm aiming for. So it's just an awesome sign of just God's hand on the situation. So you have to imagine Jacob is feeling really good at this point. Is he well? Jacob said. Yes, they said. And here is his daughter Rachel coming with his sheep. Like, wow, how extra fortunate. And so Jacob said, look, it's still broad daylight. It's not time for the animals to be gathered. Water the flock, then go out and let them graze. So here he is as a shepherd himself, a man that knows how to work the field, and he's trying to boss them around and tell them how to do their jobs. But they replied, we can't until all the flocks have been gathered and the stone is rolled from the well's opening, then we will water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Fun fact, first female shepherd mentioned in the Bible. As soon as Jacob saw his uncle Laban's daughter Rachel with his sheep, he went up and rolled the stone from the opening and watered his uncle Laban's sheep. So Jacob waters her sheep, and it's kind of an interesting little parallel to his mom Rebecca, who watered the servant of Abraham's camels when he was out looking for someone to bring home to Isaac. And so it's kind of this big, full circle moment kind of a thing. Kind of cool. And so then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept loudly. I have to skip to the next slide here. Just Jacob, the real ladies man. Oh my word. Are you kidding me right now? Like, you meet her and you just run up to her, you kiss her and you weep loudly. Like, bro, pull it together, man. But I mean, imagine how tired he was. Imagine how like the relief and, to meet her and to just be like, and so this whole, kiss thing wasn't like, oh, let's make out. It was more just like a greeting family, kind of a thing. And so he tells Rachel that he was her father's relative and Rebecca's son, and she ran and told her father. So then Laban heard the news and he's like, oh man, I remember these people. I remember these relatives. They're the really well-to-do relatives. Like, those are the ones we want to hang with. And so he is seeing this opportune moment for receiving a decent bride price, if you say that, like where in this culture, men didn't like buy a wife, but they did pay a bride's price to the family of the bride. And so here he hears news and about his sister's son Jacob, and he ran to meet him, hugged him, and kissed him, and then he took him to his house, and Jacob told him all that had happened. So he tells him about his 500-mile journey, tells him about the song he wrote. I know. And then Laban said to him, yes, you are my own flesh and blood. After Jacob had stayed with him a month, Laban said to him, just because you're my relative, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. So, hey, I'm providing you food and stuff, but you're providing this labor for me. You shouldn't do it for free, and you shouldn't just hang out and be a lazy man, right? So now Laban had two daughters, and the older was named Leah, and the younger was named Rachel. Leah had tender eyes, but Rachel was shapely and beautiful. So again, kind of fun Bible trivia maybe is this statement, Leah had tender eyes, is basically some sort of Hebrew idiom. It's a statement that we don't have an English equivalent of it, nor do we even have a super duper clear picture of what it actually means. So the best way to interpret it is just because when you compare it to what comes after it, but Rachel was shapely and beautiful. So some people think it means that she couldn't see well, and that kind of thing. Like she actually had weak eyes, because I want to say the King James, I think, says she had weak eyes, and most likely it just meant she wasn't as good looking, that maybe she was even bordering on quote unquote ugly. And so, but Rachel was shapely and beautiful. So the comparison there is to kind of say that Leah was different than Rachel in that regard. And so, interesting, just interesting thing, And so I went to the wrong. So here we go. Jacob, the real ladies man. That was my, the hugging her and kissing her and weeping loudly. Crazy man. No. So Jacob loved Rachel. So he answered Laban, I'm going to work for you for 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. And Laban replied, better that I give her to you than to some other man. So stay with me. And so Jacob worked for 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. And man, that just tells you the power of love and how it can cause just hard work to seem like no big deal. Like it's like working to provide for your family, to serve your family. It's like, it's not that big of a deal because you just love your family so much. So Jacob had some of that going on. And so it only seemed like a few days to him. 7 years go by. And then Jacob says to Laban, since my time is complete, give me my wife so I can sleep with her. And Laban invited all the men of the place and sponsored a feast. And that evening, Laban took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and he slept with her. And so there was a veil involved, and it was dark, and awkward scriptures. Hashtag awkward scriptures to read in public. Okay, so verse 24, and Laban gave his slave Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her slave. The 7-year deal and the deception. Oh my goodness. It's so crazy. So the 7-year deal is kind of like the bride price. Essentially, it's all the wages that he would have earned over that time. I'm sure he got room and board, included in this thing, but in the end, he's going to get married. And so that was a good deal for him. Good deal for Laban. But then Laban tricks him. And so when morning came, there was Leah. Wow. So he said to Laban, what the heck, bro? Like, what have you done to me, man? Wasn't it for Rachel that I worked for you? Didn't I stipulate here that I like Rachel and that's who I wanted to marry? And why have you deceived me? And so it's like, well, Jacob, now you know what it feels like, bro. Call up, you should send Esau a text, man, and just let him know, like, hey, man, now that I've had a taste of my own medicine, it don't taste so good. So why have you deceived me? Laban answered, it is not the custom in our country to give the younger daughter in marriage before the firstborn. So he tries to blame it on culture, tries to blame it on external, factors. But complete this week of wedding celebration, and we will also give you the younger one in return for working yet another 7 years for me. And Jacob's like, all right. That sounds good. And then Jacob did just that. He finished the week of celebration, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. And Laban gave his slave Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her slave. Jacob slept with Rachel also, and indeed, he loved Rachel more than Leah. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. So he set out to marry one person, got two. No, this is not the Bible saying that polygamy is a good thing. Important biblical interpretation piece is to ask yourself, is this prescriptive or is this descriptive? Is this telling me how I'm supposed to live my life, or is it just merely describing how life was lived? And there are plenty of times in scripture where one spouse, like the monogamous relationship, is lifted up as the ideal God ordained option. And so no, it is not a biblical thing that you should have multiple spouses. And so as we look at just how this whole section of scripture works out, you take the deception of men, deceivers on all sides. You've got Jacob working deceptions. You've got Laban doing some deception. You've got long journeys. You've got distance covered. You've got, all this stuff. You just see the hand of God so evident in this whole process. It is incredible. It's amazing to see how God weaves all of these different pieces of the story together to accomplish his purposes. And we'll see even tomorrow as we continue on in the next chapter. It's just crazy to see how even the polygamy thing, even the multiple spouses and stuff, how God uses even that dynamic to bring about the perfect number of children of Israel, as Jacob will soon be called. And so God uses the fallenness of man and redeems it for his purposes so that his purposes can be accomplished. And that's the kind of God we serve. He's that big. He's that great. So with that, be encouraged. God is in control. He's got his hand on your life. He is leading you and guiding you, even when stuff feels crazy, even when it feels chaotic, even when it feels out of line, even when that person wronged you like crazy. God's in control. He's got you, and he can work all of this together for your good and for his glory. So with that, God bless you. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.